And now, it's the Finding Your Spine podcast with host Chase Spears.
Welcome back to the Finding Your Spine podcast, where we call you to live and lead boldly in the truth. What's going on in the Air Force? What's with the malicious compliance that we continue seeing over COVID and other shot policies? We've talked a lot about this on the show, and this episode we're digging into it again with another fellow veteran, Major Kim Bitter from the U.S. Air Force Reserve. And Kim, it's great to have you here on set. I so appreciate you making the drive down from Wisconsin. I know you got a lot to talk about. We're just going to kind of jump right in.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
You betcha. I'll do a quick bio because everyone has to suffer through that for coming to the set. Kim is a mother, veteran, nurse, midwife, and fighter who served 20 years in the Air Force Reserve. Her tours of duty include 7 years in the Air Force Academy and also a deployment in 2016 to Udeid Air Base in Qatar, where she was the officer in charge of an aeromedical evacuation crew, helping to bring injured soldiers off the battlefield and back to major medical care in Europe. Now she is continuing to fight. Really, you had to fight the enemy then, and now you're fighting the Air Force, right? Because they're just stuck on malicious compliance, trying to force her out rather than give her credit for the 20 years that she served and being allowed to retire. And you are fresh off of a board of inquiry on that topic, which we are going to jump right into. So with that really fast bio, tell us, let's just jump right in. Talk about last week. Like, that was a major event, the Board of Inquiry. What is that? And what did that actually mean for your career?
So the Board of Inquiry is a panel of 3 members, senior to the person that is being inquired of, I guess, which is me. So I had 3 colonels on my board. They are randomly selected, and they look at all of the evidence that the Air Force is putting forward on why they think I should be discharged, and all of my evidence on why I think I shouldn't be. And then they hear, it's almost run like a little court proceeding. It's not quite as formal as a court proceeding, but it's very similar in that there's a prosecution and there's a defense, and they get to kind of go back and forth and say who they think or why they think what they think. So I met with them, and ultimately they have opted to vote for discharge for myself, or recommend discharge for myself.
To recommend, but we're fortunate in one piece, because that's a recommendation. It's not a binding decision yet.
Yes, correct.
And what happens to that recommendation?
So that recommendation now goes up with all of the evidence in a package up to the Secretary of the Air Force. And
he is the one who ultimately makes that decision.
Yes.
Now, for context, why I read your story. We both know Jim Phelps, and I read the work that he did on this in the Gateway Pundit. And we run in a lot of the same circles who are trying to call on the military to start doing the right thing, to stop continuing Lloyd Austin's war on warriors, really, when it comes to this topic.
Yes.
And I'm just shocked that here we are a year after the new administration came into town, and we're still seeing senior officers in the military who don't seem to realize it's not 2022 anymore.
Right.
You did 20 years.
I have done 19 years, 11 months, and essentially 30 or 26 days. So I'm 4 days short.
4 days short
of 20.
And they're trying to push you out.
Yes.
With a discharge.
Yes.
Rather than allow you the credit for your full time served to retire.
Yes.
Over shot policy.
Yes.
Not because you committed a crime.
No.
Not because you're a bad airman.
No.
I mean, you're. I don't know if you want to say the role or not, but I mean, you're coming out of a rather senior, hand-selected executive level role in the Air Force Reserve.
Yes.
That's one of special trust and confidence that most people don't get selected for.
And the board also found that although they voted for discharge or recommended discharge, they recommended that my service be characterized as honorable.
Well, I mean, there's that, right?
There's
so you served.
It's good.
You served honorably, but now go away.
Yes.
Right? Where's the logic in that?
Yes, I didn't see it. I don't think my lawyer saw it. I think we were both kind of shocked and frustrated by the ruling. Yeah.
It's just the logic. It fails.
It does. And that's, I think, a big part of the problem. I think, honestly, if you start to let me back up 1 second. My first round of college, I studied psychology. My second, I studied nursing, and I have a master's in nursing. So I've spent a really long time studying people, and why they do what they do is very interesting to me. So I looked at the board and I thought, why did you choose that option? Like, how did you get to discharge from what I showed you? But then once you got to discharge, how did you get to that characterization as honorable? If you're voting discharge, why? I must have done something, right? And if I did something, then that should, by the very definition, be some version of dishonorable, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be kicking me out. So I think that's where I got stuck first. Was I'm thankful that it was characterized as honorable, if that's the way it goes through the Secretary of the Air Force, but frustrated to think like those two things don't go together. They don't make any sense together. How can you say that I've served honorably, also I need to be kicked out?
Yeah.
So
it's just the most basic contradiction.
Right.
Right. And
so I started diving in further. How did they get there? So there were 3 O6s, and they were all they had all been commanders or were current
and by that
commanders.
You mean colonels.
Oh yes, sorry, colonels. They were all colonels, and they either were commanders or are currently. I don't know that part about them. I don't really know anything about them at all, other than some very basic facts. So I think that there's this great kind of a cognitive dissonance in that they had all been either in command or coming up into command through the COVID vaccine issues, mandates. And I think that when they were commanders, they were very likely faced with the same problem that my commander is now being faced with. I'm saying I won't get a flu shot because I believe that order to be unlawful. And so I think they were faced with some of those same decisions. And obviously, if they're still in, the decisions that they made were to be the yes men, to say, we will definitely do as we are told. And we won't think through what we're doing necessarily, because we can't if we're to do what we're told, because the things that we're being told don't make sense, but we're going to have to do them. So I think that when they sat in that board and they were confronted with that same evidence, even though they looked at it, and I do believe that they looked at it and saw the point of where I pointed out that it was an unlawful order, but I don't think that they were in a place where they could realize they had also given unlawful orders. Mm-hmm. I don't think psychologically or mentally they were in a safe place where they could say that, because that would have to make them really look inside of their heart and soul and say, I've done the same thing. And I don't think that they were there.
Well, and what's particularly interesting is you mentioned the flu shot, mm-hmm. and we've all had those. Now, after 2020 and what they put me through the COVID shot, I decided after that you're not putting needles in me anymore, and I just started ignoring the emails. And we've talked about this with other people who've come on the show. Prior to 2020, that was not a deal killer. At most, you kind of get a smack on the back of the head, go get it. And if you didn't get it, it was not something you got punished about. It was like you might get a sideways glance and you might get an eye roll, and then flu season's passed and life goes on as normal.
Right.
It was after 2020 through about 2022 that all of a sudden this just... the gravity of it became like that of a black hole.
Yes.
That all of a sudden...
I think really after 2022, mm-hmm. because during COVID, nobody had to get a flu shot.
Yeah, because it's amazing.
I haven't had one since 2019.
During the year of COVID, there was no flu. It was amazing.
Yeah, correct.
For a single year, God
yes.
made that one thing go, and then it came back. I'm science. It bewilders me. But beyond all that, last year, Secretary of War Hegseth signed a new policy saying for Reserve and National Guard members, this is no longer a requirement.
Correct.
Right. And what I'm trying to get people to understand is we've had the secretary who has made some really good, what we call hard policy changes, like what's on paper.
Yes.
Now we're geeking out into my doctoral research, but there's the shadow policy, the norms, the way we've done things, and that there were military members who had disciplinary actions started under old policy That policy has been rescinded.
Right.
It's been updated, but those processes to punish them are continuing
Yes.
as if the new policy doesn't exist. It's like, well, it's like you're grandfathered into the old law.
Yes.
And that's really where you're stuck at.
In fact, that's exactly what the government attorneys said. They told the board in their closing arguments, you may know that the policy is no longer in force for reservists, but it was when she was given this order. And that's what you need to consider.
But it was.
Mm-hmm.
But it was.
Yes.
I don't know how you're a prosecutor and you go back to the office and look yourself in the mirror with that. Like the law changed. And it's really convenient how the law changed because, like, for instance, remember when President Obama did away with the don't ask, don't tell?
Yes.
All of a sudden, discharges for military members who were openly engaging in homosexual lifestyle that had disciplinary actions started, those were stopped immediately. There was no, well, you were in violation at that point in time. Like, they're being very selective. This is for whatever reason, those who are still in power are still coming.
Yeah. I think because it's more than policy, it's a religion, it's a dogma for them, right? The religion, the dogma of immunizations, of quote unquote medical readiness, that's a term that we throw around quite frequently, when if you were really looking at medical readiness, you'd know that the flu shot not only is not effective, but also harms your immune system to the fact that you're more likely to get ill with other viruses. So that wouldn't make you medically ready, correct? The other thing in my case specifically, I have an autoimmune disorder, which makes me, quote, red, meaning I'm not deployable right now anyway. So getting a shot will not make me, quote, green. I'm still non-deployable. So my medical readiness is held up by something else entirely. So screaming medical readiness, you must get a shot at me specifically, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, especially with all the things that we have been told the last 4 or 5 years made us lethal and made us ready.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, they've so misused that term. It has really almost no value anymore.
No, correct.
And I say that lamenting, like I don't want it to be so.
Me either.
But it's the way it is. Let's back up the train a little bit. I wanted to get that context out of the way and help people understand, like, what is currently going on and why your story is so important. But let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
Let's tell your story. What brought you into the military?
My dad was in the military, and I have some other family members, great uncles and uncles that were in the military. And I grew up in Southern Illinois near Scott Air Force Base. And so I just always thought I would go into the military. It's a very military area of the country, and a lot of the smaller communities rely on military money from the base there. And so that's the environment I grew up in, and I just thought, I want to do something bigger than myself. And it was before I got my nursing degree, because I couldn't decide what I wanted to do really. And so I thought, why not give yourself over to something larger than yourself and figure it out along the way.
Isn't that one of the neat things about being in? Like,
Yeah.
I remember when I was a young enlistee and even a young officer, I always loved mission-minded things, and to be like, I'm a part of a tradition, a lineage of something that's supposed to do so much good, and does do a lot of good.
Yes.
It also does some things that they're not so good. But no, that's neat. I shared that affinity.
Yeah.
And so you initially, did you start on the enlisted side, or?
I did. Yep. I was enlisted as a med tech for 6 years.
Okay. Medical technician.
Medical technician. Yes.
Okay. And so what made you cross over to the dark side? I did the same thing.
Right.
So
I sometimes refer to myself as almost the accidental officer. I took a break. So I had some family stuff going on, and I ended up taking about a 5-year break from military service. In that time, I finished my nursing degree, and I was well established as a nurse. And I reached back out to a recruiter, and I said, hey, I want to come back in. And she said, that's lovely. We need nurses. And I said, oh, I want to come back in as a med tech. Like, that was the best job on the planet. I want to keep doing that. And she said, well, you can't, because we don't have a direct commission source for nurses, and we need nurses, and you're qualified. So let's bring you in as a nurse. And I said, well, that sounds like less fun, but okay. But then if I'm going to do that, I'm going to go with the best of the best, right? So I'm going to be a flight nurse. That was my caveat to coming back in as a nurse.
All right. So what's the difference between a nurse and a flight nurse? Like I hear it in the Army too, surgeons and flight surgeons. And the only thing that I know is the flight surgeon. When I was a company commander, I had one of those in my company. And
Yes.
and like once a year, well, you're actually supposed to once a month. It only came to me like once a year. You have to review the pay chart.
Yes.
And I remember coming across him, and he was a flight surgeon. I was like, dude's doing good. God bless him.
Yeah, so flight nurses are nurses. We're all nurses, but we don't work in the clinic. We work up in the aircraft. So in the Air Force, we work up in fixed-wing aircraft. And we're qualified on 5 different aircraft, and it just means we fly into the nearest place that we can, where people have usually been brought back from the point of injury to a space a little bit closer and stabilized, and then they get on the plane, and then we take them back to a higher echelon of care.
Which is what you were doing there on that deployment 2016.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I was a ground troop in Afghanistan 2011, 2012.
Okay.
And so like we were just jealous of the airmen because they're coming in. I mean, there are a lot of airmen stationed there in Afghanistan.
Yeah, sure.
So Air Force don't hate on me. But I'll never forget there was this one day I was flying out of Afghanistan. I think I was on my R&R.
Mm-hmm.
And I had taken some little puddle hopper out of Salerno up to Bagram.
Yeah.
And there's a Qatar-based air crew who'd flown in to pick us up in a C-130 to get us back to Kuwait, I think it was, or Kurdistan, wherever it was that we were transiting through. And I'll never forget, as we're sitting there waiting to disembark the aircraft, there's this airman, a couple of airmen who were back there readjusting the aircraft and doing all the stuff on the floors that I thought looked cool, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And they're complaining about, man, I got to spend like 2 whole days here in Afghanistan. And I've been on ground, I think, like 7 months at that point in time. And, bombs going off around and,
Right,
working up my PTSD skills. And I'm sitting there thinking, you little weasel.
No.
Right. But
Don't hate them because they made a better choice.
I know, right? I know. But I say all that to say, sorry, I don't get to have these conversations very often with a fellow Air Force officer.
Yeah.
I gave Skip Skilpert a little bit of a hard time about it as well when he came in. But, I mean, what y'all do is doing medical evacuation.
Mm-hmm.
Is so important. And I tease the Air Force, but I love them because I was a paratrooper. Like, I don't jump if y'all don't fly. And I didn't get out of Afghanistan if y'all didn't fly. So thank you.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget, we lost 9 soldiers from my brigade on that deployment.
I'm sorry.
And it was, I've written about this, and I still get on the verge of misty-eyed every time I talk about it. You never forget standing that ramp ceremony.
Yeah.
You never forget it. And one thing that was always on my mind every time that they would leave on a helicopter from our base, and we knew they're going to Bagram, and from there they will depart Bagram on a C-17 straight back to Norfolk. No, not Norfolk.
Where they go?
Delaware.
Oh,
Forgetting,
yes.
I'm brain cramping it. Dover.
Yes,
Dover in
Dover.
Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere in the back of my mind, I think, I'm glad there's going to be a crew there to receive them. And every time that we had someone evacuated medically, as a matter of fact, one of our soldiers who died, he ended up officially passing away in Germany because thank God there was a crew like you to get him out of Afghanistan to Germany. And tragic that we lost him. I wish he would have lived, but I thought also to myself, what a miracle of modernity that they could at least get him back to such a high level hospital where there might have been a fighting chance. And I mean, what's that like being on your side of it?
Sometimes it's kind of crazy. I've had some crazy things. Our very first flight in at Al Udeid, we'd been in country, I think, 3 or 4 days, and you're completely disoriented for time, right? Because you land and you've been traveling for 2 days or whatever, and you don't know what day it is or what time it is, and you're sleepy and whatever. And then the phone rings and they say, you have about an hour to get over here. And I remember sitting up in the bed thinking, where am I? What am I supposed to be doing right now? Like I'm in pitch black. What's going on? Oh yeah, that's right. I gotta alert my crew and we gotta get over there. And when we got over there, nothing went like it had in training, right? The paperwork wasn't right. Nothing was right. Nobody seemed to have any information about the mission we were going on. And then I guess you have an option, potentially. I'm not sure at that point. There was no option for me. We were going on this mission. Paperwork didn't matter. Nobody knew where we were going or what we were doing. The point was that there was somebody waiting for us at the other end. Somebody needed us to come pick them up. And so we were going on this mission. We got on the plane and we got there and we ended up picking up a POW. And it was a guy from Canada that we were picking up. And the reason that they had called was because they said that, AE, aeromedical evacuation, was the fastest way to get him out of the country. And so he had been a prisoner of war for a while and they found him, I guess, and got him on our plane. And so that kind of set the tone for our whole deployment. We were like, is the whole thing going to look like this? What else could possibly not be the way that we were told it was going to be or whatever? And there were a lot of things that happened that we just kind of had to roll with whatever. A bunch of Army guys show up one day and I think we were in Egypt and same thing. They had no paperwork. They were just like, we were just told to meet a plane here. We essentially hitchhiked for an hour or so to get to the airport. So, oh, okay, that sounds great. Hop on the plane then. I guess we'll figure out how to get you into Qatar when we get there. I don't know what to tell you, So a lot of it is just keeping a flexible mindset, but also I think you have to be a fairly seasoned nurse in order to be conscious enough of the medical issues and what you're looking at in that place, and also manage all of the flexibility that comes with the military and getting things done there.
I would imagine trying to perform medicine or practice medicine in a moving tube is an entirely different experience than practicing medicine in a room where it's not moving and has a window and...
Yeah, it can be a challenge, and there's no doctor on the plane with you.
Oh.
So it's 2 nurses and 3 medical technicians that are up there. So in order to become a flight nurse, you have to have critical care experience in your background so that you feel comfortable managing some of the things that could happen, because it's up to you once you're up there. What you can technically, I guess, get on a call with a doctor, but I feel like that has always taken so much time that it's probably better to just manage the emergency and deal with it when you land.
Now, which airframes did you fly on?
So we were at the C-130 is my favorite. I have to say that. Yeah.
All right, I'll have to ask why in a minute.
The old dirty 130, because it goes everywhere, and the crew is amazing. Amazing. They work hard, they play hard, they're awesome. Then the C-17, we're also qualified on that. The KC-135, the C-21, and the C-5.
The 21, the Sherpa?
Yeah. The little tiny one, yeah. Just takes one patient and one nurse.
That was my favorite thing to jump.
Yeah.
I was so bummed when they canceled those out of the inventory. When was I left Alaska? I left the end of 2016. I want to say it was 2015. I want to say it was the year before that the Air Force, the Army nixed that program, and then ended up in a tug of war between the Army and the Air Force, and we won't get into that. But that was my favorite one because you get a C-130 and you know what it is taking off in a C-130. There are no windows, and it's a little bumpy unless you're in a J model, and even then it's still kind of bumpy.
Yes.
And C-17s are great. Cadillac in the sky, plenty of room. But again, we never had our own dedicated jumps out of Alaska like they do at Fort Bragg, so we had to strap hang, and the crews needed to get their flight hours in, so we'd be in that thing 3, 4, or 5 hours while they're flying around, and then they'd come back and drop us off on the way home. Never understood why they couldn't drop us off and then go get the flight hours, but it is what it is. But the C-21, I'll never forget, because it took off at the National Guard airstrip instead of the main Elmendorf airstrip. It was elevator lifts. Literally, that thing would. So, for anyone who hasn't seen a C-21, pull up, just Google it real quick. Army Shorts Sherpa C-21. I think it's based off the Shorts 300 airframe, if I remember. And it's like a mini bus with wings on it. 3 wheels, It's awesome. Dual turboprop. And that joker would come in and land, and he was doing 7-minute turns.
Oh my
and
gosh.
and because it was designed as a passenger liner, it has windows.
Right.
And so like we
true.
can actually see where we're at, and that helps with the motion sickness. A lot of people don't understand
yes.
when you're in a C-130 or a C-17, you hit turbulence, you don't have a visual reference. Like
Yeah.
there's an amplification of the motion
rough.
sickness.
Yes.
And I'm like, I can see where I'm at. I'm not going to get motion sick because of that. And they're doing 7-minute turns. Like literally, it would rotate wheels up, and immediately the jetmaster is saying 2 minutes, and we're immediately standing up. It was awesome. I loved it. I was so bummed when that. I'm sorry, I went off on a gut diatribe there.
It's good.
Paratrooper memories. But I cannot imagine trying to treat a patient on one, because that is some cramped quarters.
Yeah. Yeah. I have never been on the C-21 with a patient. I mostly did C-17s, KC-135s, and the 130.
Yeah, the 17. That's little more comfortable. But the 130, I can see why you'd like that. It's got some spunk to it, some personality.
It does.
And a long history.
Yes.
That thing's been flying for, 60 years now?
And it takes more patience. You can carry more patients in that than in the C-17 or the 135.
What?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would have had no idea.
Yeah, because you can put them all up and down the center on both sides, and you can put them up on the sides of the aircraft as well.
Oh, how many patients? Do you recall how many patients?
I think, well, I didn't really fly on the J model, so before that, the H, I think, took 72 patients.
Wow.
Fully stocked, like you'd be cramped for space.
I was going to say, that's like a fully loaded paratrooper's a 60.
Yeah, but then the C-17 without like modifications takes 9.
It's like double the size.
Yes.
I never would have guessed that. I would have thought it'd been the opposite way around, like double the 130.
Nope.
That is.
Isn't that crazy?
I learned me something. So this is the kind of work that you're doing. I mean, you're literally, this is life-saving, critical care work, evacuating people from battlefields. I'm presuming you were making turns out of Afghanistan.
Yep. We went to Afghanistan, Oman, Jordan. Gosh, I don't remember. Bahrain a couple of times.
And you were the officer in charge, and there, you got there was your team, I should say, was recognized.
Yes.
For its level of accomplishment.
Yes.
And so everything's sailing along smoothly. And then 2020 shows up.
And then 2020 came around. So in 2019, I had been selected by the ops group, the operations group commander at Travis to come and be his executive officer. So I went over to do that. I'd been in the seat maybe a few months when... Oh, no, it must have been 2020, sorry. 2020, I was selected to go over there because I think I'd only been in the seat a couple of months before the mandate came out. And he asked me if I was going to take the shot, and I said, kind of offhandedly, I don't think so. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, as a nurse, I've read the research, and the things that we're doing don't make sense, and nah, I'm not going to do it. And it kind of all blew up from there.
So... how did it blow up? Because I know everyone's got a really personal experience on this.
Yeah, I'll skim through some of it. My ops group commander became irate with me, went on a tangent about how I didn't belong in the Air Force, and...
Over a shot.
Yeah, so he was a colonel as well, and he was very angry that I was continuing to say no. You know, I wasn't going to do it. And he took me over actually we have 2 separate offices for the operations group. And he took me over to where the enlisted people were sitting, the command staff, doing their work, because he wanted to take back my computer that had been issued to me by the military. And obviously I was having some trust issues with the military at this time. So I said I would like a hand receipt for turning this thing back in, because what I don't want is a year from now somebody to come back and say, they can't find that computer, and it was last signed out to me. So we went over to that section, and I thought that he was over the yelling part. And when we got in there, he said, she needs a hand receipt for this computer because we're going to be kicking her out of the Air Force and she doesn't belong in the military. And I was still a major in the United States Air Force with an active DBIDS clearance, and that's how I got on base that morning. So we weren't kicking me out of the Air Force. He was just very, very angry. And it turned out after he left, we had a bunch of new enlisted folks that were just coming into the unit, and they were just standing there wide-eyed and, what's going on, ma'am? Are you really getting kicked out? And I said, or does he really have the power to do that? And I said, he doesn't. And that's what's making him so angry. But then we got to have a nice talk about how chain of command still works. And if you are choosing to stay in the military, then you are choosing to accept that chain of command. And ultimately, he's still your commander. So, think long and hard about disobeying lawful orders that are coming down and what it means to have a lawful order put in front of you.
Mm-hmm. But in this case, this was very clearly an unlawful order. And there's been a lot of talk lately about lawful orders versus unlawful orders. And I need to do a show about that, but no, we won't do it today. But let's talk about the unconstitutionality specifically of this order. And so no one misunderstands, the Department of War has acknowledged this is in writing. This was unlawful as mandated. Those words, I'm quoting, unlawful as mandated. Mm-hmm. And now people like you and me who've studied the Constitution and were aware of the law, we knew from the get-go this was unlawful because it had not gone through the proper lawful requirements.
Correct.
And had it, okay, that'd been great, but it didn't. Mm-hmm. But I know you really want to touch on the unconstitutionality of it, so let's go there.
Yeah, it started with COVID. That's really what started me diving into some of this. In 2017, I was diagnosed with celiac. It's an autoimmune condition, so I started looking more at my health practices. What does it mean to be healthy? How do I make sure that my immune system stops attacking me? How do I make sure that my immune system isn't stimulated as often? How do I just take better care of myself? I've never been one to really be sick, so that wasn't a huge concern, but I did start diving into a lot of health practices. So when COVID came along a couple of years later, I was already in that mindset of there are alternative ways to treat illness so that I don't stimulate my own immune system, or so that I don't have to put any chemical products into my body. So I'd already been looking into that. That was bolstered by the fact that I'm also a midwife. Midwives are known to be very crunchy kind of people that do alternative health care pretty well. They don't rely a lot on medications and interventions. And so it was easier for me, I think, than some to turn and make that kind of shift into how do I get away from the pharmaceutical industry, even though I had been a nurse for 20 years at that point. So I had been looking into that already. COVID comes around. I start thinking none of this is making any sense. I'm not going to do it. And then I start looking at the religious accommodation process and the medical exemption process. For me, I should have just gotten a medical exemption to the COVID vaccine because it never should have come down to the fact that I even was ordered to get one based on my health history. If we were looking at individual considerations and what would keep me the most quote unquote medically ready, would be that we wouldn't stimulate my immune system by giving me any kind of injection that would stimulate my immune system. My immune system attacks me when it's hyperactive. And so I talked to the doctors about that, and they were told that they couldn't push anything up out of the clinic as far as medical exemptions go for COVID, which is a whole different problem that I don't want to talk about right now. So I turned and said, well, I also have this religious concern about it. It's been based off of some faulty science and some stuff that I don't agree with. I believe that my body was perfectly created and it doesn't need any assistance from anything else, but also it's been built on aborted fetal tissue that was harvested in a really terrible way that I can't get behind and I can't be on board with. And so I said, I'm not going to take it based on these religious concerns I have and the medical concerns all coming together. And so when I filed my religious accommodation, it quickly became evident that they weren't following A, their own process, but B, that some parts of that process are not in alignment with the constitutional rights of American citizens. And as George Washington says, this is not a direct quote because I always get it messed up, but he says something about when we become soldiers, we don't lay down our citizenship. So
I'm so glad you brought that up. We did not lay aside the citizen to assume the soldier.
thank you.
That
Yes.
that's such a key quote. Like that should be hung over every military gate.
Agreed.
And I'd never encountered it until I was at Arlington National Cemetery one day, and there's this, for lack of a better term, amphitheater behind where the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is.
Okay, yes.
I was
Yeah,
out,
I've
so I
been
was stationed at Fort Meade. I was a platoon leader. Fort Meade's just about a half hour-ish down the road from D.C., and I'd set up a staff ride for my company to go to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I'd met some of the people who worked it, and they were going to give us a special kind of, not, they weren't going to take us like full on inside, but kind of give us a quasi insider
Yeah.
event tour, if you will.
That's awesome.
And so we got the bus and put the unit on it. We drove out there to Fort Myer. I think it's Fort Myer. Yeah. And walked down the hill. And I'm sitting there as the guys on the stage giving the presentation. I happen to glance up to my left. And I see this quote. And I've never seen it before. I've never heard this before. And I
Yeah.
remember, like, I literally took a picture of it. I was like,
Yes.
how in the world have I never heard this? So I was like, I got to look this up. And I came back and I Googled it. And there's the letter. It's saved on, it's in the
Right.
National Archives and on the Washington website.
Yeah.
And it so defies this false doctrinal notion we have of you knew what you were signing up for.
Yeah, you gave up your rights
Gave up
when
your
you
rights.
signed on the dotted line. I did not.
No.
You know what we call those people? Those are mercenaries.
Yes.
They go fight in another country where they have no rights and they just fight. That's not what I signed up for.
That's not what I signed up for either. I had a dear friend, I'm not trying to be repetitive, I've said it on another episode, who really opened my eyes to this because this person who I'd been friends with for years saw my concerns over the shot. Same as yours, constitutional, moral, and said, but isn't that what you signed up for, to do whatever you're told? And I thought, oh, that's a dangerous place to go. To
Definitely
tell
no.
men and women under arms you signed up to do whatever you're told. Oh, that's a dangerous place for a republic to be. I mean, look at what's happening in Iran right now.
Right. Right.
You don't want your military to be willing to turn arms on civilians.
Exactly.
That's how massacres happen.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because not nearly enough people think back to that.
Even people in the military don't consider that. I will have the same discussion with someone that I've been in the service with for 20 years, and they'll say, well, we knew what we were giving up when we joined. No, I wasn't giving up my rights. Why would I give up my rights to a constitution that I was just sworn to support and defend?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be dumb? It wouldn't make any sense.
Brandy King, I know you know her.
Yes.
When she was here, she said something that it stuck with me so much. She said, you just flat out don't want military members who don't enjoy the same rights they're fighting for.
Exactly.
It gets dangerous really fast.
Yes.
And I was like, mic drop, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you looked at this. I mean, we heard during the era of trust the professionals. Trust the professionals. And well, if anyone qualifies as a medical professional,
Yeah, correct. I am the professional.
you are the professional.
Yes.
And my specialty is not in medicine, but I was wrapping up my PhD at the time, and so I understand the basics of the scientific process. I know how studies work. I know how
Yes.
control groups work, and so even though I'm not in the medicinal sciences, I know the basic procedures, and I'm looking
Yes.
at this, and because I'm a public affairs officer in the Army as well, I understand how narratives are built
Right.
in order to sway opinion and behaviors.
Yes.
And I'm watching this and I'm like, this is not a scientific process. This is a
A
narrative building.
Yes. Exactly.
And I mean, just knowing that immediately, I was like, all right, now I have to dig deeper. Now I have to look deeper. And of course, it was amazing to me how many generals who have about as much medical training as I do
Yes.
suddenly became MDs overnight.
Yes.
Ted Martin. He was the one on Fort Leavenworth when I was there. He was, don't get me started. Funny enough, and once he retired, he deleted, like, you would never know he was in the Army because he like deleted everything.
Oh my
until he
gosh.
retired. I'm like, yeah, not such a big guy after all, are you? But I mean, you saw this, and you say, I'm just not going to get this shot based on common sense grounds, and you're getting screamed at.
Yes. Told I wasn't a good officer. I'm a field grade officer at this point. I have two duties. One of them is to protect and serve the people below me, right? All of the people that I lead. I need to make sure that the things that are coming down from the top are making sense for the people below me. So you're like the stopgap. You're the consummate middle manager as a major, right? I want to take care of all the people below me, but also I have a duty to ensure that the people above me are doing the right thing and that they know if they are not doing the right thing. And I have always known from the time I was a little child that I was born for such a time as this. I just didn't know what this was until maybe this came along. Like, I think that's always been my favorite verse. And I've always thought, man, wouldn't that be great to find out what your purpose is? You know, you're not just like meandering through the desert trying to figure out where you're supposed to go. And so I've always been a little bit mouthy, a little bit loud, and probably my parents would say a little bit more than not rambunctious in the like, I don't really think I'm going to follow that train, you know. Everybody else is doing the thing. Kim's over here doing her own thing. And so I've always kind of been like that. And I think it made it easier for me when I saw this coming along to be able to speak to my upper leadership as well, to say, you know, what you're doing is not correct. We need to take a time out and really think about what we're doing here. They didn't listen, but I was at least felt like I could say it. And I did. And I have multiple times to multiple different commanders and echelons of leadership. I've told them this is not the right thing. I sent an MFR up to, it was Frank Kendall at the time, the Secretary of the Air Force, to let him know about the unlawful acts that were happening to us at Travis in regards to the religious accommodation process. And he didn't respond, but his office did confirm that he had gotten an email from me. I sent it all the way up my chain. It went all the way up to the Reserve Command commander at the time, and he did take action. He did respond and come down and talk to our commander about changing some of the things that he had instituted as policy. So change can be made. You just have to keep being loud about what the problem is and be fearless, you know?
Yeah, you do. Was there anyone in your childhood? I love how you say, like, you grew up knowing that there's something different about me. And I looking back, I realized there was, and folks like us are weird.
Yes.
And we don't fit in very well to a lot of places. But we know when there's certain moral questions that come, it's not that it's easy, because there's still fear, and there's still a desire to not be completely cast out of the city Old Testament style. But there's also an even deeper drive. I have to look myself in the mirror.
Exactly.
Especially, I think, when you become a parent, we're both parents.
Yes.
I think it's even heightened at that point in time among weirdos like us.
Yes.
That I can't sell out.
No.
And then look at my kids and say, you can't sell out either, because they'll smell that a mile away.
Exactly.
So was there anyone who was really instrumental in helping develop that in you when you were young? How did that come about? Or was it just there?
I don't know. I feel like it's always been there. I think potentially we thank my parents for letting it remain there. You know, it's easy. It's probably easier as a parent to be like, just get in line. Just stop doing the other thing. Why can't you, be quieter? Why can't you be like Susie down the street? She's always doing the right thing and has her hair done and whatever. And, so I guess probably my family for allowing me to just be me. I guess.
It's a great thing.
Yeah.
So let's jump back in, 'cause we got about 20 minutes here, and I want to make sure that we hit all the points. You had that match where that colonel's screaming at you. They put you on a no points, no pay drill status. You're in the reserve. Explain to listeners what that is and what that means.
So reservists earn retirement points for each day that they come in and do work. To be on a no pay, no points status. Otherwise, we are off doing civilian other world things. We have
normal life.
Yes, whole other lives that we live. We're kind of like a staffing agency for the military, in that they call us when they need us, and we come within a X amount of time, depending on what our job is. But we come in and we do the job that needs to be done, and then when the job is over, we kind of go back to our civilian lives and live our own life. So we earn points for every day that we come in to work. And to be in a no pay, no points status means that you're not earning retirement points. You're just you still belong to the military. So you kind of hang out there, and you can't leave the country or move to a different country, or, you can't really do anything, but you're also not getting paid.
Are you still having to come in for drill?
No, you're barred from coming to drill. So in some ways you might think like, oh, yay, you have all of your weekends free during the month, but not entirely, because they could call you at any time and say, now you need to come back in.
They still exert tremendous control over your life, but they're giving you none of the benefit or none of the predictability that was part of the agreement that you actually did sign up for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this goes to court. The SHOT mandate goes to court, and there's an injunction in Doster v. Kendall.
Mm-hmm. And that halts everybody from being essentially persecuted. We were being punished unfairly for our choices that we had made, with the military not following their own regulations on what they were supposed to be doing or what they agreed to be doing, and that essentially it was a preliminary injunction. So the judge came back and said, I haven't heard the case yet, but I've seen enough or heard enough to believe that there is a case. So I want to stop the bleeding right here. We're going to halt all discharges and adverse impacts right here, and wait until we hear the case.
Now, isn't it interesting? I want to peg on the difference between that legal proceeding out in civil court and the legal proceedings in the military. You have a judge here who says, this case is, I think there's a case, and it's likely to, the plaintiffs are likely to prevail. So I'm going to go ahead and put a pause on continued violation of what I believe this case is going to demonstrate.
Yes.
And yet, back in military justice land, you have prosecutors acknowledging, it turns out the order was illegal, but we're still going to prosecute it.
Yes. Yes. And that's part
Clown world.
And that's also part of where I think more and more of us are seeing the constitutional violations, right? If an order is unlawful, whether it's unlawful when it's given or it's unlawful in the way it was carried out, it's still unlawful. So you're violating my rights somewhere, and because I'm still a citizen of the United States, I still have those rights. I have the right to religious freedom. I have the right to my personal security, which plays in a lot into healthcare decisions that you make, because people can't demand things of your body. Mostly the personal security that people have heard about is more, you can't be searched without probable cause, right? Or you can't have things removed from you without probable cause that you were doing something wrong. But the other piece of that personal security is my body is my body. And I get to say what goes into it and who does things to it. And so there is not a commander alive or dead in the military that could ever say, I have the right to tell you what to put in your body. They don't.
Because at that point, you're their personal property.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which I'm not.
No. That wasn't in my contract either.
No. That opens up a whole different set of problems if we become personal property of the commander.
Yeah, so there was a war about that.
I believe so.
Yeah.
It's kind of a while back, though.
A while back, yeah. So that injunction halts them from technically taking action against. You said it stops them from persecuting. Now we both know it didn't really stop culturally the persecution, because there was the who's on the team and who's not on the team,
Right.
And they were still found. They were very creative
Yes.
in their ways of punishing. So let's fast forward real quick in our last few minutes here to when this kicked off again with the flu shot issue.
Yep. So at that point, I had said, I'm not going to get any more vaccines. I've done the research on them and I don't believe in them. They haven't been properly vetted. There's been no scientific studies showing that they are effective or safe. And so I won't take another vaccination. And my command said, well, you will get the flu. And I said, I won't. And they wrote me a written order. And I said, I'm not even going to acknowledge that order because I believe what you are giving me is an unlawful order. So back to what I said a minute ago, I have a duty to let the people above me know when I think that they're doing something that is against the Constitution or immoral. And so I told them that, and they said, oh, you don't want to sign the order? Then we'll start giving you paperwork. So paperwork for an officer, a letter of reprimand, is career ending, essentially. So I got 3 of those in a row, rapid fire, all for the same problem. Said no to getting a flu shot. And then they went on the hunt to find some other things that I had done wrong as well, so that they could show, quote, a pattern of bad behavior, because the lawyers told them they would need a pattern of bad behavior in order to send me for a discharge board. So I used some CBD oil over the summer. I had this intractable nerve pain in my face. Felt like I was being poked with a hot needle about 100 times a day. It was miserable. And we use CBD oil in the medical community to break nerve pain for diabetic patients. And so I thought, well, it's a nerve pain. Let's just see if it works. So I did a little mini experiment, a scientific mini experiment on myself, where I wrote down all my symptoms and when I would take the medication and how I was feeling and, everything. So it took about 7 days and I had no more pain, and that pain has never returned, even though the medical community says that pain will return within about 6 months, and eventually you'll just live with that pain for the rest of your life. But it's been 2.5 years, and it's never come back.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but this was during your personal time. This was not during
Yes.
drill time.
I was on no pay, no
Right,
points.
and so-
I've been on no pay, no points for almost 1.5 years at that point.
Yeah, so there was no actual military violation there.
No.
But they went. It's kind of like the Lenin quote: "Show me the man, I'll show you the crime."
Yes.
They went to build the packet.
Yes. So then they said, are you aware of this policy, when I came back in and off of no pay, no points? And I said, no, I've never seen that before. Well, that policy was signed into effect while I was on no pay, no points. So there's, I guess, some argument that I should have been up to date on all of the policies, although I feel like the military has some responsibility to let me know if things changed while I was out, because I was out. I had no access to computer systems. I wasn't receiving any emails. No one called to check in on me. So I was doing my own thing.
Well, let's get into the logic of that. The whole flu shot issue, which you just faced a board of inquiry for, is right now, as we speak, there is no flu shot mandate for members of the Reserve and National Guard. Like Secretary Hegseth
Correct.
struck that down, but they're still following you on that because, well, at the time that she declined this thing, it was policy.
Right.
When you use CBD oil on your personal time, it was not against Air Force policy. Then while you're out, then they changed it.
Right.
They didn't grandfather you on that one. So it's pretty clear what
Yes.
the gig is here.
So the board did find that I had no wrongdoing in the CBD oil. And I find that amazing, praise God. Also, I find it an interesting caveat that the CBD oil doesn't interfere with their religion of immunizations, so it was easy for them to find I didn't do any wrongdoing on that. That case was very clearly laid out. It was an experiment I did to make sure that I could get free of this pain, and it worked, and praise God, I'm free of the pain. So they found no wrongdoing on that. And the other thing that my command tried to pull in was that they had another major come over and ask me to do a little bit of work. He's an executive officer I work with. to do a little bit of work. There was no real timeline on it, no clear definition of what needed to be done. Long story short, we had a power outage. The work didn't get completed in the UTA weekend that I was there. I'm only on duty 2 days a month. Didn't get completed while I was there. And they came back to say that was a dereliction of duty. I had violated an order from an officer to complete some work. The board also found that wasn't my wrongdoing. So it was only on the immunizations that they got.
It was just on that. So they cooked up the three things so they could get you before a board of inquiry. And,
Yes.
and the board clearly recognized these two are so far out of left field, there's no way we can justify, but they're holding to this one, which is
Yes.
the current policy says you're not in violation of.
Correct.
Why do you think they voted that way?
I really think it has to do with the fact that they would have had to examine the orders that they've handed out if they realized that, or if they recognized that I had potentially been given an unlawful order and that's why I had refused it. They have given out those same orders, right? We know as commanders that they are saying the exact same things to their troops every day. Get your work done. Go get green. Go get your shots. So I don't think they were in a place where they could admit that to themselves yet.
I think that's the biggest problem with the continued cultural malfeasance across the Department of War on this, that for commanders and those who were in command to get on board with the new constitutionally minded policy, it would inevitably require them to acknowledge they were wrong.
Yes.
And I just don't think they have it in them. But what bothers me even more as a citizen, a veteran, is you don't have it in you to acknowledge a weakness, a mistake. I mean, there's so much forgiveness that could be had if you say,
Yes.
I didn't know. I thought I was following.
Yes.
I thought I was right. Now I know I was
Agreed.
wrong. I mean, who doesn't love to forgive that?
Yes.
And yet they're continuing in that because I can't admit I was wrong, so I must continue to defend my reputation by continuing
Yeah.
to punish people who have been proven to be in the right.
Exactly.
And I got to tell you, that concerns me
Me too.
for the defense of the nation. It
Me too.
really does. I mean, this is why I'm so big on the military accountability movement, which I'm sad to say it seems to me is about dead.
We're taking a pause. Let's not call it dead.
Okay.
We're coming back.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
We'll have to talk more at dinner about that because to me, like I was a PAO for 20 years. If anyone wants to be a cheerleader, by golly, it's me.
Yeah.
Right. But I can't be a cheerleader when I see continued lies, when I see continued treating people who sacrificed like total undesirables.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to remember there is that our God is big and gracious, and there's no sin that's outside of his bounds to forgive, right?
Yeah.
So I personally may not be in that place, or you may not be in that place where we can say, I forgive you. But I guess a message to all commanders at all levels would be that there's nothing you've done that God can't forgive you for and help you walk through gracefully. So,
Amen to that.
Yeah.
As we wrap up here, the Board of Inquiry made the recommendation
yes.
to discharge you rather than let you complete your time. But that's a recommendation. It's not a final decision. Where are we at right now, and where's this go?
So it just happened last week. My understanding, and forgive me if I get this a little bit off, but my understanding is that I will receive a complete transcript package of the entire board proceeding. And then my lawyer and I will review that, make sure everything in there is correct. And then that whole package will go up to the Secretary of the Air Force's office.
Okay, and I'm brain cramping. I should know this. Who's the current SecAF?
Troy Mink.
Troy Mink, and his deputy is Matthew Lohmeyer.
Yep, one of his undersecretaries is.
Who wrote a phenomenal book.
Yes.
I have great admiration for Matt. Matt, I don't know if you listen to the show or not, but by gum, man, please get involved in this. Please get involved in this. This is where, for such a time as this, right?
Yes.
Why do we have power if we're not going to exercise it for righteousness?
Yeah.
All right, so it goes up to them. So there's hope.
There is.
There's hope.
Always.
Always. Well, I love that you're fighting it. What what has held you through it? Because so many other people would have been like, it's fine, just put the needle in me and I'll move on with my life. I mean, but you're risking a lot. I mean, it's a lifetime of benefit. You're risking to stand on principle.
Well, I think if we don't stand up now, then it just gets harder. Every day that people don't stand up and say this is the right way to go and this is not the right way to go, it gets even more difficult for the next group of people to stand up and say that. And I think that's been borne out as the people that stood up against anthrax. They fought a very similar fight to what we're fighting now, and I don't think that was ever fully resolved. Not for for a lack of their own doing, but I think that a lot of that didn't get resolved at that time, and we are repeating that over and over.
It's interesting you bring up anthrax. I people might say because I have questions, you're an anti-vaxxer, and no, not by any means. I'm just a thinker.
Yes.
And I saw some really ugly things, and because of that, I look a little bit more closely in making my healthcare decisions.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, the risk is mine to assume. And that is what God has entrusted me with, is care of my body. But that I had the first in the series of the anthrax so-called vaccine when I first was going to, when I got to my first duty of assignment, we were getting ready to do our deployment, and back then everyone had to have it. It was supposed to be, I think it was a 3 series at that point in time. It was at least a 2. And I had series 1. That thing put me on my back for like 2 days. And that was that was my first time of thinking, hang on, I've heard stories about vets who had stuff put in their bodies that messed them up.
Right.
And I was really, really glad. Shortly thereafter, they realized how dangerous it was, and they nixed it, because I was like, I don't want to go for version 2. I don't want the second series.
Well, to be clear, I don't think they realized there was a court case that Dale Saran brought forward. At that time, he was a Marine lawyer, and he brought forward a case that said you are stomping on the constitutional rights of our citizens that are in uniform, and it needs to stop because you haven't followed your own process. And so he won a court case against the government that made them stop.
Well, God bless him.
Yes.
Because I did not want to be on my back for another 2 or 3 days.
Exactly.
That was bad. Anything you want to add? Anything I missed?
I don't think so. I think we covered it all.
Well, Kim, you've got a brave story. I never tire of meeting patriots who are willing to stand up to a chain of command. I've been out of the Army 2 years now, and with time, there's some of the PTSD of bad bosses fades, but
yes,
but you never completely forget just how toxic things can be in certain scenarios. It can be great in a lot of other scenarios.
Oh yes.
But you and I walked a similar path. In that, and so I never tire talking to people like you who are willing to stand up, and I'm so grateful you did. I'm grateful you were willing to make the drive down here and come talk about it.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's an honor, and I'm pleading and praying that the Secretary of the Air Force, the Undersecretary, that they will look at this and see the same silliness that is clearly evident that I can see. And I know you've got great legal representation, a mutual friend of ours who's also sat in that seat, the man with potentially the best beard in the Southeast U.S.
It's pretty amazing.
It's pretty amazing. It is. All right. Well, thanks so much. And we're going to rush this one out and make as much noise as we can for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you betcha. This wraps up another episode of the Finding Your Spine podcast. And we are here bringing you stories of courage to show you it can be done. Kim is another shining example of someone who is not bending, and she's not breaking either. But it's up to you now to put these principles into action. It's up to you to find your spine. I'm Chase Spears. Thanks for listening.
Remember to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you next time on Finding Your Spine.